How would you teach skills to students with not enough equipment? How to know what's the winning product to offer? I really want to start a brand or business and a YouTube channel, but I'm afraid of failure. Hello everyone, today I'm going to answer some questions that have been asked on my Instagram channel. My Instagram, I asked some questions on my stories about business and also my teaching profession. Just a little bit of context. I have been teaching for about 8 years now. That's a long time, but not really at the same time. And also I have started my own business, The Everyday, and I have also been working as a content creator for about 5 years now. So I wanted to take this opportunity to answer some questions of things I've learned along the way that I think would be helpful for some people that are curious about doing something related to that. So it's probably going to take me a while to answer some of these questions. So I've decided that I'm only going to answer 3 questions per profession, I would say. And the first profession that I'm going to cover is teaching. So the first question I got about teaching was, how do you make your online classes engaging? So one of the things that I like doing as a teacher is not actually forcing a lesson plan within the time frame that you usually get if you're in class. I would like to just break it down because online classes are a little bit more different in format and also in retention rate of students. I feel like your alertness, because you're alone, you don't have that sense of community, it's a little bit harder. So I actually like to break it down, and then I kind of have like an objective at the end of each class. So I like to kind of leave a little maybe 10 to 15 explanation of what the task is at hand, and then give them majority of the class to work on it on their own. But also to give you an understanding, I teach high school, so it's a little bit different and than it would be if you were to teach middle school or elementary. And I also teach art, so that's also a lot very different. Next question is, I was a visual arts teacher also in 2020. How would you teach skills to students with not enough equipment? Now, that is a very tricky question. We did encounter some of those roadblocks as an art teacher because not everybody has access to the same materials. You kind of just have to adapt. Now, let's say if you have a coloring assessment or you may want to learn a new skill, you kind of would just adapt it to whatever they have available. Let's say you're doing a painting assessment, but they only have like colored pencils with them. Well, you kind of want them to kind of achieve the same technique. So maybe the lesson plan is about lighting. So how would you achieve lighting via paint, and how would you achieve lighting via colored pencil? So you just adapt with whatever they have. You can't really do anything about the fact that they don't have access to the materials. It's about maybe shifting your focus on it being material based to more like concept based. The next question I got is how to stay organized as a teacher. I think I am wired very differently, and that the first thing that I focus on is actually being very organized. I have like a main lesson plan that I kind of follow. It's a skeleton and a schedule of the different topics that we cover. Now, because every student and every class is going to be different, so sometimes some classes may take longer than others, so I kind of just work around that time frame, the skeleton, and I don't force like a specific timeline. So as long as I have like a skeleton of what we are trying to achieve, it's not necessary for me to actually complete it, but more so like work through it one by one. So to stay organized, you need to kind of create a main skeleton of the objectives that you want to achieve per class, and then work with the students' capabilities. The next profession that we're going to go to is starting a small business. Now, I have a small business called The Everyday, and I work as the creative director now, and I also help with day-to-day management as well. I have a team of about 8 people, and it is still growing, and it is very fun and interesting to have a small business for quite some time, and I've definitely learned a lot of things along the way. So the first question is some tips on how to plan a small business. Okay, starting a business is actually a lot more difficult than a lot of people think it is. I think there's so much excitement surrounding starting something, and then I think after that excitement is over, maintaining it is the most difficult part. A lot of people forget that you need to make sure that there's longevity in the business. So before you start a business, one of my main tips is actually think of how you want it to be in the long run. Like maybe have a 1 to 3 year plan already in the works, because there is business fatigue where you get started, that excitement is over. Now you need to get over the hurdle of that motivational slump that it happens, which is what's going to happen next, what I'm going to do. Really need to have like a really solid plan. And of course, the plan doesn't need to go a specific way. It's more of like a basic direction. At least you are headed somewhere and you have an idea so that you don't feel totally lost. That's one of the things that I recommend when starting a business. Always have a plan. Then also coming up with an idea, really think of something that you feel like you want that currently does not exist in the world. Of course, everything has been done at this point. Really, it's about kind of making it unique to you and how you kind of conceptualize that and have it come to life. So you really need to make sure that you think about that. Okay, the second question is how to know what's the winning product to offer. When it comes to coming up with a product, I think that there's so many different risks that come into play. You not only have to think about a product, but you also have to think about the risks that come with it. Of course, the investment of the product, how much you're going to put into how many products you're going to make, and how are you going to sell it. With businesses, there is always that risk of not being sure how well you're going to sell. So you can start at a small scale, or you can just deep dive and then invest a lot in it and then have a lot of people pool in. However, those things are a lot more tricky and involve a lot more people. So if you feel more comfortable starting at a small scale, which is what I did, that's exactly how I started in terms of making my planners. Now, in terms of developing like a winning product, I would say you would look at areas you feel like are missing. So one of my biggest frustrations when collecting my own planners was that I felt like a lot of them had so much fluff. I wanted just like very functional pages, weekly pages that can help me achieve my to-do list. So that's the reason why I created the planner. So you have to think of something that you're probably frustrated with in your everyday life and then start from there and kind of come up with a concept there. And then eventually like what are areas that you feel like could grow, and then what are other products that you have in mind? How do you expand? Those are a lot of things that you need to think about in your plan. So one question is very general, one of the biggest lessons I've learned. So can you please share some tips and knowledge about business? I want to start a business in the future. Now, one of the things that you have to remember is that it's always good to work on your own, but also you need to kind of acknowledge that eventually if you are expanding, you do need the help. And when you are getting help, you need to make sure that you do your proper research and that you do the background check, and you also know how to kind of work on being a leader. Some of the downfalls of starting at a small startup is that there is a lack of structure. And I admittedly would like to say that I guess in the everyday at the beginning, it was a little bit hard because kind of the boundaries were kind of muddied because of how small it was. There was no sense of hierarchy, unlike working at a school that I am so used to. Kind of the job descriptions are also bleed a little bit because you're such a small company. The tendency is some people will do things that are beyond what they're supposed to do, and you need to kind of acknowledge that and be very clear to the people that are going to be working with you that that's going to happen. I think it is inevitable because you just don't have the room to have that many roles, but you also have to admit that you do need the help. So when you are working with other individuals, you need to have very clear communication, which is something that I have learned and the mistakes that I have made myself. Also, you really need to make sure that the communication and the deadlines are absolutely clear, because it really affects the work ethic, the community, the culture that you are starting in a small business. It really affects it. So I want to start answering questions about content creation. And the first question that I feel like is really important is, how do you get brands to see you? So one of my biggest things that I see online is a lot of people just post with like the product or a picture of them smiling with it. Because it's such a saturated field already, that kind of gets really boring. And the intention shouldn't be about getting free stuff at this point. And maybe at the early days of blogging, it would have worked. But at this point, things shift because of they're catering to how many people are in the industry and who are interested in it. The thing that you should be doing is, what are some products that I like and what do I want to share to other people? What knowledge can I share that I feel like is unique? Some of the best content creators actually utilize what they have, and as they grow, their content will change as well. So for example, I remember Bretman Rock using just like drugstore items at the past because that's what was accessible, and what made him really interesting was his funny commentary, the way he kind of delivered a lot of his lines, and it was really funny. And that's what made Bretman Rock unique. It wasn't really about the products. Eventually people were persuaded with the products that he purchased because of how he executed it. So when you are doing things, how do you get a brand to notice you? Just tag them and use it, and then eventually you will get there. You just work your way up. Work with what you have. So the next question is, how do I know how much I price certain things? That is a really interesting question because it varies about your skill level, how many years you've been in the industry, how long you've been in the field, and then also like your following count, etc. So the way I price things is really how much time I spend on these things. I can't really give a price range because that really depends, but I think the best way to know how much to charge is to just ask around. Like for example, if you have the same number of followers, ask them how much they charge. Sometimes getting a gauge at how much other people are charging is a good way for you to get started on your startup fee. I have a rate card actually that showcases the price for each deliverable, and then it changes every year because my content changes every year.
Pesos.
For example, I'm trying to stay away from dedicated YouTube videos because I feel like that decreases a lot of interest. Maybe I like brand mentions now just on YouTube videos because I get to do what I want, and then I just insert a clip of the brand that I like, and then that kind of just aligns. So you do need that advertising, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing because you want other people to know about different apps or different products that are available out there that align with your interests. I really want to start a brand or business and a YouTube channel, but I'm afraid of failure. You know, you can give all the advice in the world, but it's really up to you in the end whether or not you're going to take it and apply it. It's about changing your mindset. And I always tell this to myself because I know the right answer sometimes, but sometimes it's hard to apply it because saying it is a lot easier than actually doing it. So one of the things that I would tell them is stop thinking that it's gonna, no, I'm joking. I would just say that there's always going to be failure, and you just have to expect the worst and understand that if it fails, then assess what were your strengths or your weaknesses when you were working on your particular project, and what can you take and learn from that project and when you create a new one. All you need to do is kind of move forward and learn how to adapt and keep building and evolving your brand. One of the things that I've realized is that, like, I always tell this to Pat, but my YouTube channel has plateaued. It hasn't had the same number of growth as it did at the beginning. And I feel like sometimes that I have failed in a sense because I haven't seen the same number of growth, but I have to keep reminding myself to just kind of reformulate, change my content, just gathering things that interest me and then trying to share it and just trying out new things. And then something will eventually work. So that's my tip for people, is to just keep pushing and trudging along, because that's really all that you can do. Because that's also the excitement, is never knowing if it's going to work as well. So just keep trying, keep going. Okay, that's not all the questions that I received. There are a lot more, but those are some of the questions that I got. Now, I can create another video, so if you do have any questions that you would like to ask about business, education, or even as a content creator, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'd be happy to answer any of them in my next video or even in the comment section as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my video, and that is it, everybody. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.